the difference between like what someone's attracted to for a one-night hookup versus what someone's attracted to in a relationship. That has to do with the whole concept of having the opportunity to spread your genes without any commitment, right? So like someone who is what you would call hot and promiscuous, the attractiveness to that is that this is an opportunity for the male to spread their genetics without having to work too hard.
Yeah, the way I would phrase it is that is the result, so to speak. Men don't think about that consciously, right? They're just
Right.
they're
It's
just
it's a
they
natural
find this
cycle.
woman attractive and they want to have sex with her.
Right.
And they're not thinking, just like when you eat food, you're not thinking, although some may now, but most people don't think, oh, what is the underlying nutritive logic that led to my survival? They just say, oh, this smells good, it tastes good, I'm going to eat it.
Right.
And so we're not conscious of the underlying logic that drove the evolution of these attractions in this case. But your question also raises the interesting issue of males versus females. So and this gets to a fundamental sex difference in our reproductive biology, which is referred to as it's kind of a clunky phrase, but obligatory parental investment. So, in other words, what is the minimum obligatory parental investment that a man versus a woman has to put in to produce one child? And for men, the minimum, the absolute bare minimum, is one act of sex. That can result in a child. For women, the minimum is that 9 months of pregnancy, which is huge. And so this has actually been called the Darwinian paradox, or the Darwinian puzzle, is that we know that given that asymmetry in investment, we know that it has been beneficial in the currency of reproductive success for men to have sex with a variety of women. Okay, that's fairly straightforward. But why do women do it? Because we know women also engage in short-term mating. They engage in affair mating. So estimates vary, but say somewhere between, say, 20 and 35, 40% of women have affairs, even if they're in a committed long-term relationship. Interesting issue. Well, what do they get out of it? They don't increase their direct reproductive success, and never could have, because unless their partner happened to be infertile, the most they can have is basically one kid a year. And so adding additional sex partners doesn't do anything for their reproductive success. Okay, and so it's been a puzzle, and there have been, maybe 4 or 5 leading hypotheses about why women do it. And this is one area where I've changed my mind on pretty dramatically. So early on, a former student of mine, Marty Hazelton, who's now a professor at UCLA, and other friends and colleagues like Steve Gangestead and Randy Thornhill, put forward this idea that the reason that women do it is that they're pursuing a dual mating strategy. That is, they're trying to get investment from one guy, like the good dads, but good genes from another guy.
Oh, wow.
And so it's
But is there any research done on what type of mate a woman is likely to cheat on?
Well, that's a good question. So there's been some, and it's not conclusive, but basically the only way this could work, and I have to back up just a second on that, we know that affairs are very costly for women. So if discovered, they result in infidelities, result in violence. Sometimes they result in killing. Getting to the killing, I don't know if we want to get into that maybe later in our conversation.
Yeah, you wrote a whole book on murder.
I wrote a whole book on murder. Yeah, the murderer next door. But also women suffer more than men. If an infidelity is discovered, they suffer reputational damage. They suffer sometimes social ostracism. It's cataclysmic for their relationship. So, it's one of the leading causes of divorce worldwide across cultures, is if there's a female infidelity. And so the issue is, what benefit could be so great to a woman that she's willing to risk all these costs if it's discovered? And so the good genes dual mating strategy argument could work in principle, and it could work if there were no costs. And this is, one of the reasons why men and women commit infidelities in secret. It's been driven underground. People don't go on Twitter and say, "Hey, I just had an affair on my partner." It's driven underground. People try to keep it under wraps so they don't experience the costs. And of course, there are costs to men as well by being discovered. They're just not as cataclysmic as they are for women.